Okay, this is part 2 of 1/6 changing tires. So what we're going to look at more is the comparison between these two tires. So previously what we just found at the end of the first part is the difference in circumference of these two tires. So if you look at question 2 right here, it asks how many inches further does the truck with the larger tires travel than the ones with the factory installed tires. So our newer, bigger tires were 103 inches, and we're going to subtract that from our 92.5 inches on the factory installed tires. So when we do that, we are going to get 11.5. Actually, scratch that, we're going to get 10.5. So 10.5 inches further between these two tires using their circumference. So think about circumference being basically the perimeter of a circle. So if you start at one point and travel till that point touches the ground again, the difference in these two tires, one is going to go 10.5 inches further compared to the one that the truck is calibrated to. So if we look at 3, it says after one rotation of the wheel, determine how many times further the truck with the larger wheels has traveled than the factory installed. This is going to be referred to our constant K. So if you've taken, I believe physics has done stuff like this where they use constants, but what we're going to do is establish how many times further our larger tires travel compared to the factory installed ones. So if you see this little equation down there, it says that K is the circumference of the new tire over the factory installed tire. So we're going to take this 103 and divide that by our 92.5. So when we plug that into our calculator, that is going to give us what our new constant is going to be. We're going to go to 3 decimal places, so it's going to be 0.114 or 1.114. So now this is going to represent our constant. So the larger tire goes this much further compared to the other one. So we're going to use that for the rest of the problems on this page. Okay, so now we're going to answer some questions. So keep in mind the K that we got was 1.114. So this is our constant. Once again, that's how many times further the larger tires are going to travel compared to the smaller ones. So it wants us to use these results to answer some questions down below. So I know I just added here, but it wants us to write that again one more time right there for our K. So what it wants us to do in these questions here, if your odometer is saying 20,000 miles, wants to know how many you've actually traveled. So if you look at the actual mileage, you're going to take our K, which is 1.114, and multiply it by the reading. So we're going to take our 1.114, multiply that times 20,000. When you plug that into your calculator, you're going to get 22,280. So if you took the tires off, put on bigger tires, and then figured out our constant, multiplied that 20,000, that's actually how many miles you've driven on your vehicle. So even though the odometer is going to say 20,000, you've actually traveled 22,220. Your next one is your speedometer, so how fast you're going. So if it says you're going 60 miles per hour, you'll multiply that times our constant. And when we multiply that times that 1.114, we're going to get 66.84. So 66 miles, or 66.84 miles per hour. So you're going almost 7 miles per hour faster than what your odometer is saying. So we're using this constant because that's how many times further the larger tires, or the tires that we have now, are taking us, and look at the difference between what it tells us and what we actually are doing. So 5 and 6 ask for the percentage error in your odometer reading. So we have this nice formula right here provided for us. That is your percentage error. This is something that's used a lot in science. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing here that kind of goes back to physics. But essentially what we're going to do is just plug our numbers into that and see what our percentage error is. So that's what that's saying, is basically how far off this 20,000 is compared to what the number actually is. So our original 20,000, that is what our exact number is. And what that means is that that's exactly what it's telling us our vehicle is telling us. And then what we found is an approximation of what we think it's going to be, or what we think it actually is. So we're going to basically substitute those numbers into that equation up there, and whatever number we get, that is our percentage error. So if you notice these little bars here and here, those represent absolute value. So it is going to be 22,280 minus this 20,000. We're going to get the absolute value of that. Divide that by the 20,000. And then multiply that by 100 to get us into a percentage. So if we do all of that in our calculator, we're going to get 11.4%. So that's how far off we are from where we actually, or where we estimate it to be. We're going to do the same percentage error with our speedometer. So the 60 is exactly what is telling us in our car. This 66.84 is our approximation that we came up with. So we're going to subtract those out as well, or plug it into our percentage error formula to see what we get, and when you multiply that times 100, and when you do that, you're going to notice we're going to get the exact same number as what we got with our odometer. So these two are the same. So we have the same percentage error between the two of them. If we look at number 7, now we're going to talk about how many miles to the gallon that we get. So it says that your gas mileage originally is 18 miles per gallon. So we're going to multiply that times our constant of 1.114 to figure out how many miles per gallon we actually get. And when you multiply that out, we're going to get 20. So we're going to get 20 miles per hour there. And then lastly, it says in number 8, you're driving a truck with larger tires. The speedometer showed 65 miles per hour. And you're ticketed for exceeding the 65 miles per hour. So this is the same constant that we're going to use here. So you thought you're going 65 miles per hour, but you have this tires change. So as we saw, we went from 60 to where we're actually driving to 66. So now we have 65. So we're going to go multiply that times our constant, which is going to be 1.114 to see what we actually get. And we actually get 72.41 miles per hour there. So are we going more than 5 miles per hour? Yes, we are. Are we going more than 10? We're not. But the fact is, we're still going over the speed limit. Cops have every right to ticket us at that point. So there we go. So this is going to wrap up our lesson for changing tires. The big thing to see here is that if you change to bigger tires, then the numbers that you're going to see from your odometer and speedometer are going to be off in terms of they're not going to be as much as it actually is. And then if you change to smaller tires, then it's going to be the opposite effect, where the numbers that you see are going to be much larger than it actually is. So this is one of the newer lessons that we do, but that's going to wrap up our second part on 1-6, changing tires.